Hello and welcome to episode 85 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Off-Topic Podcast. I'm Mike Sollosi, Monsoon on the boards, and we have a very special podcast partner for you here today, Peter Triezenberg.
Hi everyone, Peter Triezenberg. I have Fury on the boards.
Now, Peter, over a year ago, you and I were on an episode of Retro Encounter together with some other people, and we talked about Kan Gao's To the Moon, which is
To the moon!
Right. It's an indie RPG, visual novel kind of game that was, I think, composed in RPG Maker. And
Yep,
we had a real nice time talking about it. Both you and I liked that game a lot.
That was a really good game. It was probably one of my favorite games we covered for the podcast. Super sad, super emotional, good time.
So today, we're here to talk about the follow-up to the Moon in a special mini-episode, A Bird Story, which is done not exactly the same way To the Moon is, because To the Moon had the trappings of a group of scientists entering a man's psyche to sort of unpack his memories and reconfigure them somewhat so that the dying old man would have positive memories before he passed. And A Bird Story is not set up quite the same way. This is just a story that is definitely a memory of someone, but is done in sort of almost a magical realism kind of unusual method of storytelling, but without dialogue and only very, very simple interactions, like turning off light switches and picking up and putting down items. Now, and I believe it's set in the same world as To the Moon, but it is a separate, unconnected story otherwise, right?
Yeah, the kid from A Bird Story, Colin, is he's going to be the new patient in Finding Paradise, the
Right.
To the Moon sequel that's supposed to come out later this summer.
Right. Yeah, I checked the Steam listing for Finding Paradise just less than an hour ago, and it says summer 2017. So we may get an announcement about that soon.
Fingers crossed. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Right.
But as you said, Bird Story is it's in the same universe, quote unquote. But other than the tangential connection to Finding Paradise, it's not like there's really any. There's not really a whole lot else to connect it. It's a very, very self-contained story.
Yes.
Told in a very unique manner.
Yeah, and also it's not very long. I beat it in, I think, an hour and 15 minutes or something. I finished it yesterday evening, and I was a little surprised at how short it was. I thought I would have to do like half yesterday and half this morning before we record, but it was really easy to finish in one sitting. But
Yeah.
You move around just like To the Moon. It resembles maybe a mid-90s Super Nintendo game in a lot of ways, but it's like the setting and the art looks like To the Moon, but it's really just a very simple move around, interact with objects game that I think is maybe incredibly easy to compare to a movie or a long episode of television, because the interaction is limited, and really it's about the storytelling and the atmosphere and the music.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's a good comparison to make, and especially since there's no dialogue, which is a storytelling conceit you don't really see very often in games. Like even it's something like To the Moon, where I think the best thing you could call it is a point and click adventure game, mm-hmm. which, I mean, Bird Story falls into the same category, but even then, a big part of those adventure games or visual novels or stuff like that is you're reading text. That's their main way of delivering the story. But for A Bird Story, your gameplay interactions will trigger the next scene, but the scenes are told pretty much entirely through the sprites, the expressions that they're making. Like, they'll do the little like sad look down at the floor thing from FF6 or something. And the soundtrack, music conveys a whole bunch of the story in this one too.
Yeah, and the game's director and lead designer, Kan Gao, also composed the music for this game, and it's really, really impressive. The instrumentation was usually pretty limited. A lot of the songs are solo piano, some of them use small ensemble. There was one like strings with a clarinet bit that I really liked. But it's just taking in the scenes with the music, and having the music communicate a lot of the action, almost like a Tom and Jerry cartoon or something, was just so impressive. I would stand in place and listen to the music a lot in this game. Small confession here: this was my first time playing a bird story, but 2.5 years ago, when I was writing my entry for a Music of the Year feature, I only had really 3 things I liked or something, and I wanted a 4th and a 5th game, so I just listened to a bunch of soundtracks to a bunch of games for that year, and I found the A Bird Story soundtrack and just loved it. I listened to I think I listened to the whole thing through like it was a concept album or something, and just liked it so much that I included it in my Music of the Year for that year without ever having played the game, which is a shame because I could have played the game in 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's good standalone listening. The soundtrack comes with the game, and you can I've listened. I've had that as background music for just writing and stuff.
It's really pretty, and
it's super good.
And almost all the tracks are mellow, other than I think like the one. Do you remember the scene near the middle of the game where the teacher and the veterinarian are trying to chase after the main character?
And you jump on them like a Goomba.
Well, before then, you're like dashing and between ends of the screen and through doors that exit into other doors. It's like a Scooby Doo chase scene or something.
Yeah, that's the one bit where it gets super goofy.
Yeah, that's the one time where the music isn't mellow and beautiful and just sort of goes into madcap xylophone nonsense. But it's a really, really great soundtrack, and anyone that plays this game or is even curious about this game, I recommend listening to it. And it's even better in context than as a standalone listen. So, okay. Peter, can you give me a very, very very, very abridged version of the plot to this story, in just a couple sentences? And spoiler alert to everyone: we're gonna spoil the 90-minute game that you might as well just play for yourself.
Well, the premise of Bird Story is pretty simple. You play as a little boy, and he's very lonely. You get context clues through the story. He lives with his mom, but the mom's never home. Doesn't really seem to have many friends, or any friends. But one day ends up finding an injured bird. The bird's wing has been damaged. It's being attacked by some badgers. He ends up taking it home and taking care of it, and they end up forming a friendship, and he ends up kind of opening up a little bit more. And this is all told through the aforementioned lack of dialogue means that this is all told through context clues in the environment and through these kind of surrealistic. I hesitate to call them dream sequences, but like the whole game's world is just kind of like this kind of surrealistic experience.
I compared it to magical realism, which is a storytelling technique that's used by what's his name, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and a bunch of other famous authors. But basically, it has fantastical elements that are treated as if they were everyday occurrences. Like there's a couple scenes where he makes a giant paper airplane by combining notebook pages together, and then they go fly around the sky and like explore floating islands and stuff. But that doesn't happen as a dream necessarily, or as and magic doesn't exist in this world. It's just it just sort of happens that way.
It's more meant to convey a feeling, and
yes,
and it gives you sort of when real moments in the story do happen, such as taking the bird to the vet, or attending classes, or just walking around your home when you get back from school. They're often interspersed with these surreal moments. They kind of are. It's like a child using imagination to escape the doldrums of reality, kind of.
Yeah, it's I think it's basically a memory colored by imagination, because near the beginning of the game, it's made clear that this is a memory because there's a sequence where you're walking backwards and there's clocks running backwards as
Mhm.
before he meets the bird, even, which makes me think, okay, this is someone remembering this and not a story told linearly necessarily. And
Yeah.
because this is a memory, a lot of his memories with the bird are, like are flying through the sky on giant paper airplanes, or floating down from his apartment building, with an umbrella, Mary Poppins style. Mary
I'm
Poppins,
Mary
y'all.
Poppins, y'all.
Well, okay.
Guardians 2 is fantastic.
Yeah, I enjoyed Guardians 2 a lot. It was there was more Yondu in that movie than I expected, but it was welcomed because everyone in that movie did a great job. But all right, okay, enough Guardians 2. So there's these fantastical magical realism elements in the story that I think are basically someone remembering this event from his childhood, and his imagination is making some normal things that happened very surreal. It's really it's beautiful and fun. It's sometimes a little surprising, but I really enjoyed everything about this game's storytelling and vibe. And I'm glad that you sort of poked me into playing it, Peter, because it was I think it was at that the To the Moon episode you brought up a bird story and recommended we play it, and I did not listen to you for a year, and played it just now, and that discussion that podcast episode was after I had probably over a year after I had written that Music of the Year feature, so. Yeah, this is just a beautiful game with beautiful music that is just a really sweet, sad story. I mean, right at the end of the game, he loses the bird in a really dramatic scene where his paper airplane that he's flying on falls, but probably he was just running from his teacher and lost and fell or something. I don't know how to decode how it actually happened, but he loses the bird, and it looks like the bird is picked up by one of its friends. And then they have a brief reunion, and then he removes the sling from the bird's healed wing, and then he sets him free. And that was just beautiful.
It's a really touching ending sequence, and you have to press the arrow keys to let it go, and then the music kind of swells, and it's it's really good at conveying it's a simple story, but it manages to convey so much with what it has.
One of the few instances where I welcomed a
quick time event,
active time event. Yeah, a quick time event. You're right. It's one of the few times I have ever welcomed a quick time event when you're removing the bird's sling and then pushing him to the sky to set him free. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, when it's used in moderation, you can use it. That can be a pretty effective way to just immerse the player in a scene and give them a bit of interaction to maximize the impact of it, rather than just press X to escape from boulder or press X to punch boulder in Resident Evil's case. But
or press X in exactly this number of times in these sequences to dodge this dude that you're in the middle of a knife fight with. In a way, it takes you out of the action if you have to focus on button presses, unless it's taken to an extreme, like in Asura's Wrath or something. Where they lampoon QuickTime events, but these were very cute, sweet QuickTime events and there was enough gamey things in this to make it a video game and not a movie composed in RPG Maker.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, right after that scene too, is when you get the last bit of it's pretty much the game's one tie-in to the Moon immediately, is where it sort of after the boy goes back into his room after letting the bird free, and then it shows the timeline thing from To the Moon, where into the Moon you would start at Old Man Johnny and then work back in through his life, but here it starts at the little kid and then shows the entire thing, and then the title of the next game, Finding Paradise, shows up.
Right, and if you've played To the Moon and then play this game, and you'll immediately recognize that timeline, and it'll be clear that the boy, whose name we do not know,
it's Colin, I think, but that's from the description of Finding Paradise, not mentioned in the game ever.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Colin earlier in this discussion, and it
Yeah,
went in one ear and out the other to me, I guess.
you're good.
But yeah, they never mentioned the boy's name in the game. Even when he looks at the note from his parents, or maybe just his mom, it's faded out and you can't read the script. And it's man, how sad is it that every time he takes the note off the refrigerator that his parents won't be there that night or whatever it says, he puts it on a pile of other notes.
Yeah, that's just one of those little details where it's just like, oh man.
It's like, oh man, this kid really is alone. And then but you're right. You mentioned earlier that he opens up by having the bird, because there's scenes of him taking the bird to show and tell, and then like other kids in the playground, like checking out his bird, and then later when he doesn't have the bird, he's still talking and hanging out with the kids. So it's like, he's not devastated by this. He's a changed person because he had the bird. And him taking care of the bird all this time changed him as a person. And it's really it's done briefly and without dialogue. And I'm so
they
impressed.
also have yeah, they also have and then you see like at the beginning of the game, almost every other person in the environment is just kind of a faded out silhouette, but they become more defined as you go through the game. And once he starts talking to them and showing off the bird, and by the end of it, they're actually like it's like his Persona 5 is fresh on the brain still, but it's like his cognition has changed. But it's just an interesting little touch just for conveying the sense that something has changed.
I agree. It's the you were talking about context clues earlier in the game. The context clues in the apartment and at the school reflect his mental state a little bit. It's like the apartment's less lonely, and there's more light and more color when he has the bird and is clearly happy. And when it was really a lot of beiges and grays for the beginning and for the beginning of the game and the end, but shortly before he loses the bird, but before the bird revisits him again. Yeah, I don't really know how much else we need to talk about this game, because it's not long. It's this brief, poem of light and sound with no words, but enough interaction to make it a game and not a short film.
Yeah, I mean, best I can say is just play it. It's an hour of entertainment. It's something unique to the medium that you don't see very often.
And it barely costs anything. I mean, how much is it on Steam now? Like $6 or something?
Yeah, it's not much at all. It's I mean, and like if To the Moon is another like kind of like short sit down experience. Even To the Moon takes at least like 3 to 4 hours. But
yeah, I double checked. A Bird Story is $4 when it's not on sale, and $6 if you include the soundtrack, which I recommend.
Yes, do it.
And we're getting another one of these very soon in Finding Paradise, which is listed for summer 2017, which I think I mentioned already. But yeah. Peter, I want more games like this.
Me too. I really have enjoyed Kangao. What I've played of Kangao's work. I did this kind of minimalist storytelling approach, just kind of exploring these interesting themes and conveying them in an art style I think we as RPG fans are just like super fond of. That's just gorgeous 16-bit artwork.
Yeah, I think part of our attachment to this game is because you and I have been playing RPGs for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're extremely comfortable in the medium and have some affection for 16-bit games. So playing this really beautiful story, which is a very nice story that feels very crafted, especially with the musical accompaniment involved, because we like that kind of we like that kind of game, or at least that kind of art style. Having this really beautiful story communicated to us like a 16-bit RPG just makes it that much more fun and satisfying to us.
Yeah, for sure. I can't recommend these games enough. It's just yeah. I'm really glad.
But on the flip side of what I just said, let's say you had a friend who enjoys who enjoys stories and movies like this, maybe someone who's somewhat artistic minded, but is not interested in video games and doesn't play video games. Do you think this would be a good a good gift to that person, or something you would encourage a person like that to try?
Well, if they weren't playing video games, then giving it a gift on Steam might be a little difficult.
Okay,
but,
I see the folly in that suggestion now.
I'm just messing with you. I actually did get somebody I know, not to play a bird story, but to play To the Moon. It was my girlfriend played through To the Moon.
And your girlfriend did not play dozens of hours of Super Nintendo RPGs like you and I.
No, no, she got into she plays Pokemon and a few and some other games, but she's not like a big time video game person, not really.
Sure.
So
and but she liked To the Moon.
But she really liked To the Moon. Like we got to that one sequence near the end. Probably I won't say anything more on that. And we're both.
You should listen to that To the Moon episode, which I believe was recorded in February or March of 2016.
Yeah, give that a listen to hear our thoughts on that. But but no, we were both just like, it's so good, crying. Like I was legit ugly crying at one part of The Moon. And I would say a bird story would be I think if you could talk someone into playing a game like To the Moon, and you'd be like, you have an hour to set aside, and you're like, hey, I want you to experience this short little narrative thing that doesn't require really any twitchy input or like a certain degree. Like the skill barrier for games like this is like non-existent.
Yeah, like again, there's a few moments in it that really are video gamey. Like a control pad indicator will appear when you have to move somewhere. Or like when you're flying the giant paper airplane, it shows you how to control the airplane. And there's one sequence,
but it's never unclear.
No, it's always communicated clearly. And there's one sequence I liked where you're playing with the bird and just jumping through puddles, and and there's a little puddle counter that appears for you and the bird, and you can't move on with the story until you've jumped through however many, maybe like 6 or 8 puddles. And it was a very video gamey moment. It's like, oh, I have to jump through 8 puddles to complete this quest or whatever. But it was but it didn't really take you out of the fun the fun atmosphere of the moment. And it was just one brief reminder that, oh right, I'm playing a video game and I'm not watching a machinima or something. So yeah. A Bird Story comes with a hearty recommendation from both Peter and I, and we also recommend you play To the Moon and look forward to checking out Finding Paradise in hopefully a month or two, because we're recording this episode in May, and we don't have a release date for Finding Paradise yet, but hopefully we get one soon, because I'm more excited for that game than I ever have been right now, having
for sure
having played A Bird Story 12 hours ago, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I'm hoping we hear some more information on it soon. Maybe at E3. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't.
They had a booth. They had a booth for like
indie
Steam releases last year.
Well,
so.
they did. They had. They've had the Indiecade at E3 the past 2 years, I think, and and I remember some games were there 2 years ago and not there last year. Like and we even for one of our meetings we looked at an indie game that was just on like the lobby of one of the main buildings instead of a booth, because they didn't want to pay for a booth that year. Is when we looked at Pyre last year.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, but so maybe there'll be an E3 thing. I think it's probably more likely that they're working on just putting the game out, so it'll probably just be a announcement a few weeks before it comes out, and then it'll be available. But regardless, I am going to play that thing buy that thing week 1 or so, because A Bird Story was so beautiful and so adorable. I wasn't quite reduced to tears, but maybe there was a sniffle or two. It didn't hit me like Alufia 2, but. That game, even just thinking about the credits of that game makes me sad. But
I've never played Lufia 2, but I've heard good.
It's a very good Super Nintendo game, and it has the saddest ending I've ever experienced in a video game, personally.
Oh man,
But it's great. It's also the only good Lufia game, so you can just skip all the other ones and go straight to 2.
I don't think I don't have any information to dispute that with.
Sure. And also, like even the Lufia 2 remake on DS isn't good. Just play the original Lufia 2 and forget
the soundtrack.
and forget everything about the series. It does have a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about Lufia 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy, and maybe also a bird story. And unless we have some anything about a bird story you want to address before we go into our outro housekeeping.
Nope, I don't have any other final thoughts. Play it.
Agreed. Play it.
That's my thing.
A bird story's good. So, thank you, Peter, for talking to me about Bird Story for several minutes, and thank you, listeners, for listening to Peter and I have that conversation. If you want to interact with us, that you can email us at retro@rpgfan.com, comment on the RPG Fan boards to voice your thoughts, review us on iTunes and your various podcasting listening venues, visit RPG Fan on Facebook and comment on any of the articles or threads there. But if you want to message Peter or I directly, Peter, how can fans reach you?
Fans can reach me, peterT@rpgfan.com, or by email. On Twitter @IHaveFury. I'm also I Have Fury on the boards.
All right, and I am Monsoon on the boards. My RPG Fan email is my last name, Sollosi@rpgfan.com. And on Twitter, I am @TheRealMonsoon most of the time, and @EvokerForDogs when I am blathering on about Kamen Rider.
I love the fact that you have a separate Twitter account just for lengthy diatribes on Sentai.
Yeah, just because I know people that follow me normally on Twitter do not need to hear me geek out about Japanese superheroes. So I have my dumpster Twitter just for things like that.
Dumpster Twitter. I love it.
And the current Sentai is all right, but I think the current Kamen Rider is one of the better series of the 2010s. So yeah, the current season of Kamen Rider gets a thumbs up from me. So, what is there anything else to talk about? I guess next week we're going to be starting our Dragon Quest V episodes. I'll be on those, and a couple people joining me will have never been on a Retro Encounter episode before, so that'll be fun. And that's one of my favorite Super Nintendo or 90s RPGs ever. So I will not be able to say a bad thing about it, which is good and bad. But yeah, that game's great, and we'll start it next week.
It is a really good game. That might be the best Dragon Quest game.
5 and 8 are the two that I keep going back to as the best ones. So, I think that's about it, Peter.
Yeah, I think that's about it, too.
All right. Thanks, everyone, again. Good night, and good luck.